Good afternoon and welcome in to the SCC. We're in that phase 2 and we are looking at some matches here in Europe today as well. Obviously, I'm Finch. I'm joined here by Gore Miser and Gore. We got Poppies and Cold Llamas here. I actually think that this should be a pretty competitive match considering there's a slightly different look here for Cold Llamas and that Poppies, kind of struggled a little bit in that first phase.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited. So Poppies is that team that, they've just been together for so long that you expect to see that team synergy. But like you said, Cold Llama's getting, I guess maybe a facelift is the way to word it, coming into this phase. They bringing in Fails, bringing in Pretty Prime, some huge names that have played together. And when you join the likes of like Maniac, Streak Up, and Hazer, it just feels like it's not quite maybe a super team, but maybe the Challenger Circuit equivalent.
It might be, man. I think that this current iteration of the Cold Llamas is a really high ceiling. I mean, to be fair, I think your ceiling's pretty high with Ice and Amelito there too.
Yeah,
but
true.
I mean, there's something to be said for the way that Fails and Prime have been playing a bit lately to where maybe they've got some room here. We'll see. Prime has also struggled at some times here recently too, and maybe not quite looked up to that level that we know that he can get to. So we'll have our chance to find out here, Gore, as we move into those picks and bans. And you already mentioned, man, how long the Poppies have been playing together. I really do think that's huge for them.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things that people, I think it's very easy to overlook, but maybe one of the biggest factors when it comes to getting into game. You know everything your teammate's going to do because you've been playing with him for years. Like that guy's going to make the same move that he did a year ago unless it was a mistake then. And then, they've worked together, they've grown together, they've had problems that they've fixed together. It really is in its own way, its own relationship they've built. And I think that's something that is always maybe a little underestimated in how good your communication becomes because of that. And much like this, how much, people will trust you if you're that one guy who just says, hey guys, okay, trust me. Apollo's the pick here. And I think in any team, most people should like Apollo or argue like, man, that's an off meta pick. Maybe we're not going to deal with it. But like there's moments like that I think the Poppies can play with.
I think you're right, man. I mean, there's something to be said for the Poppies They've kind of seen it all together, right? If there's a loss, they're not going to be at each other's throats afterward. They've been there before. They know what to do. That's something that a new team might struggle with. So you never really know. And these are players who, on Cold Llamas, who maybe they've played together plenty before, right? These European kids have been around each other so long at this point that I'm sure there's no lack of familiarity between them at the very least. So I'm sure they'll be able to execute. So far here in the picks and bans, though, I'm a bit surprised at how many Hunters Poppies have chosen to get rid of here with the Uller and the Jingwei. On the other side, though, for Cold Llamas, that's pretty standard. You don't want to deal with Aphrodite. You do not want to deal with Yamoja or Nike so far. So I feel like Poppies are kind of utilizing their first pick status here.
I mean, maybe there's this something to be said about Uller being able to flex in the mid. I don't know how high priority that is for someone like Pretty Prime, but knowing that he has that flexibility, it's nice. Jingwei has been very big, but it does feel kind of weird seeing Streak Up take 2 shots at the very beginning of the game. And for the thing that's open to grab a Sobek first of all things, like it feels like you said, the Poppies maybe have something in their mind as to what they're trying to execute, and they're just going for it.
Hey, I mean, if you want a Sobek, then you definitely don't want the other team playing Jingwei. So I suppose that does make sense. Sure. And Sobek is such a strong tool for you in your team fights. A lot of people think that he is really highly valued right now, Gore. He's a safe first overall pick, too. No one's really punishing your Sobek all that strongly. I mean, I think this makes some sense. It's just that you're going to give up Hercules Raijin on the backswing.
Yeah, that's huge, honestly, when it comes down to it. Hercules has been one of the biggest in terms of supports that we've seen. That being said, I noticed that it's been maybe put a little bit, like the brakes have been pressed slightly on Hercules coming in as high priority because maybe the aggression hasn't been working as well in that duo lane. It's been slowing him down just slightly. But Raijin is so easily one of the best mages, if not honestly maybe the best mage in the current meta because he just does so much safe damage. And even though I feel like we see him more successful when he's dashing in than when he dashes away, he does still have really solid escape.
He does. You're right. We don't necessarily get to see it all the time, but yes, he could also reposition with that Thunder Crash. You were talking about these aggressive supports in the early game, and I think that we're seeing a few more of these junglers who can combat in the early game the value that these supports get. Now that you can't invade speed, it really is basically just about pressuring out purple or red buff on respawn. And if you have an early game jungler who can get over there and defend, then I think it is less valuable now. So maybe that's why we're seeing a little bit less of that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more pressure to be found more, like you said, out of the jungler and where they can go. But I think, honestly, mid lane matchups, make that more important, specifically for getting
Sure.
the red. I mean, Raijin early on, in my eyes, is going to be able to put a little more pressure on this Discordia than I think she'll be able to clap back with. And so if he can get that going and Cold Llamas have a jungler that's already making maybe an earlier rotation to mid lane, that red buff might just be forfeit here for Poppies. So they might have to ward up, kind of cover that area just to make sure they don't lose too much. Luckily, Discordia with their passive, it's still enough damage to kind of hold your own.
Well, normally I would say Rat and Najah, maybe not premier jungler bans here at this point with things like Thor and Camazotz and Unbot still out there. But Fails does really like to play those picks, even though Fails likes to say it. Those gods I mentioned earlier, play them. You know, like those guys are really, really good. But, I mean, obviously those are gods that are in Fails' wheelhouse, so I don't think I've got a big problem with banning those, even with a lot of value still out there.
Well, I'm interested to see this one because Fafnir is coming through, and Fafnir has been one of the most, I don't know, it feels like he's just so polarized when it comes down to it. He can do so much for your team while also contributing nothing if he's not played right. And so It's a very fine line, I think, to walk on for Cold Llamas. A lot of it early on is based on how many of those hammers you're hitting. A lot of it late game is your use of your ult, your dragon form, and kind of keeping yourself alive. So there's, I think, a lot of pressure for this to perform well alongside that Hu Yi. Luckily, Hu Yi can kind of hold his own for a little while. But it seems a little risky, just a smidge risky.
It's Pele that locks it in for Cold Llamas, but I don't know about this, the way that these drafts are working out with this Geb coming in for Poppies, because he's going to be so slow to start this early game for them, and they know they're up against pressure from a Hercules. Now, with this Fafnir locked in, maybe they're thinking they won't have to worry about it that much. I mean, Fafnir is going to be the support. Hercules would be over in solo, but still, I mean, who's utilizing this Discordia passive in the early game for them too? I don't know. I'm a bit surprised that these are some of the picks that the Poppies are going for when it feels like they kind of want to be skewed towards the late game.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know where a lot of their, I guess, like, their synergy is kind of built around some of the knockups that they've been able to pick up, but a lot of this, like, I mean, a Wheelish, maybe when you see Marcus going over and ganking Creed, there's potential for an ult combo, and maybe over there in the duo lane, but it just doesn't feel like it's going to be often enough that Marcus is going to be on either of those sides. So I think he's going to have to play on his team very heavily to make sure that he feels as impactful as an Wheelish can. I mean, we've seen what some of the SBL teams are able to do with this pick. She can absolutely run the show, but you have to be very careful with where you get aggressive because you can get caught out pretty easily as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Marcus with the way that the Poppies have drafted here. Obviously, this is going to be a sick late game composition from Poppies. They've got two of the best Guardians in the late game possible, except maybe Athena would be a decent argument, right? And then you've got the Discordia for tons of late game damage. Turnabog will be great too, and the Wheelish has all this synergy with those tanks. It's just a question of, are they going to be able to potentially get through some of this mid-game and early game pressure from Cold Llamas?
Man, it's going to be so much, I think, watching specifically where Pele goes.
Sure. That
could very early on set the pace of it. I also think that, depending very much on these hammers from Fafnir, from Hazer specifically, Warchi could have some trouble. Draco Marino could have some trouble. I mean, they're not necessarily playing the quickest feared gods in the game. But Hazer maybe biting off more than he can chew a little bit more often. I like the call for Discordia to just go over and start her red buff a little bit earlier. Like, they're doing all the things to combat the aggression Cold Llamas will have this early.
And that's good. That's what Poppies are going to have to make sure that they're doing here in this match because, I mean, later on, Cold Llamas is going to have a pretty scary draft to try and deal with once you get to that mid-game point once Maniac is able to start rotating. I think that Phils and Maniac are the ones that have kind of a lot on their plate for Llamas, the way I said that Marcus does for Poppy's score, and I'm curious about your thoughts on it. I feel like Maniac is almost certainly going to have pressure in solo, so we're going to need to see him rotating, you know, early and often.
It's weird to think because I can't remember the last time I actually got to see a Hercules in the solo lane, but I mean, he's up against Sobek. Sobek should not be able to match him in terms of clear, and so a lot of that control is going to be, like you said, in favor of Maniac. And one of the best things about Hercules, one of the reasons we see him in support more often, is because those rotations can be so impactful. I mean, if you're, you know, Chekio and you maybe just use your dash, let's say for cooldown, maybe to escape some damage from Pretty Prime, what have you, that's just a free knockup, a free pick if Maniac can rotate into it. And so maybe it's not going to be the earliest thing, you know, maybe not even pre-level 7, but there's times that he's going to have that early aggression in these first 10, 15 minutes that he should absolutely abuse that lead he'll be able to pick up.
Because it's going to be tough trying to fight these double Guardians. Like, let's say this game is 33 minutes or something like that. It's going to be tough, right? Trying to fight into that front line that the Poppies have established with the Sobek and the Gab. So that's part of why I feel like there might be some extra impetus, some extra urgency for Cold Llamas throughout this really difficult game. But so far, so good here for the Llamas. We didn't see maybe like a Lasbra-esque early game gank from the Pele, which we often see for the Renegades boys. So there's still plenty of time for Fails to maybe go look for something.
What's nice and maybe just slow paced all in all, the junglers haven't been as aggressive as they could be. I mean, this is the first time I've seen any of them really step past that 50-yard line, and now it's Fails going in.
Yeah, Fails just walks right past Marcus, start looking for damage on the Chekio, and Marcus sends him running easily. Pretty Prime over to the sides, like, man, I don't have much mana. You're kinda just dead here. And that's such a head-scratcher for me there, Gormizer. Just odd decision-making from Fails. I'd love to hear your take on it, because it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I feel like the concept is that's the guy who might be able to burst us down the quickest. Marcus is pretty low mana, although I don't know if he would have been able to factor that into his equation. Kind of felt like he was just holding W, like, let's put pressure on the mid since you're putting pressure on me, and just didn't recognize the rotation that was coming out from the other side. I mean, Chekio making such a huge swing over here this early on. Or, I'm sorry, having Draco Marino come on over here. Chekio being able to kind of meet him. Like, they got pushed out. They got maybe a little bit of progress, I would say, on Cold Llamas that looked like an engage. But there was the moment they turned the corner, that should have been the turn and run from Fails. He still wanted to fight even when it was almost imminent danger.
Yeah, maybe you don't always want to run from the Wheelish. You might get that knock-up coming through. But still, to me, Gore, there's really only two ways to look at it. Either they don't know where Draco Mariano is, so it's tough to kind of engage on the Chekio either way in that spot, or they do, and they just thought that they had enough damage to be bursted down quickly. I mean, you don't want to harp on it forever for the guys, but an odd decision there from Cold Llamas. They end up in trouble as now Warchi has his beads forced out. Just kind of a walk-up hammer from Hazer, and suddenly the Chernobog a lot less safe.
And honestly, what it feels like, at least from the Poppies right now, is that they aren't necessarily looking for some of these fights or any of these engagements. It feels like Cold Llamas, like, especially the one in the jungle, even right here, they're looking to force something to happen. And the Poppies just kind of said no the second time. I mean, the beads being used is going to be big, like you said. It makes it a little less safe for Warchi, even though he still has his ult to maybe be that saving grace for at least a little bit of time to maybe save some rotations. But I mean, Marcus wasn't really looking for any kills. Chekio is not looking for any of those damage. They just happened to be in the area when Fails just decided to fight. And I feel like that's where Cold Llamas, again, yes, you have this early aggression that you can maybe abuse, but if you don't abuse it the right way, you just end up walking into your death there. So if, Fails could do, you had kind of equated it earlier, but that Lasbra-esque gank over to the duo lane, maybe find a couple of kills there, help shut down Draco Mariano, but specifically Warchi, then that will slow down the Poppies even more, make it more difficult for them to get into the late game, and then maybe facilitate Maniac making some early rotations out of Solon.
And I might be giving Geb too hard of a time, but I feel like this is the part of the game where he does basically nothing, as Marcus is able to find a nice invade. So it's just crazy to me, man, that he gets to just be Geb for 6 minutes for free. It's nice. In fact, he's got an assist, right? He's kind of walked up and told Fails to turn around earlier. So it's just a bit surprising. There's certainly a trade-off when you pick something like a Geb, and I don't think Poppies have had to make it.
I love Geb. I love playing Geb, but for the first 4 levels, you are just extra clear for your hunter. You need literally nothing else to them. Maybe the occasional shield in case they want to get a little boxy, but like, you don't mean anything to them. You're just extra, like, you're a 5th ability, I guess, for them to throw out to try and clear the wave. Then you get your ult, and now you're just a setup machine. It's not really until you are able to have your shield maxed out and you've got, a few points in your 2 and a few points in your ult that you really start to feel it. It very much is facilitating in those team fights. And that shield late game is one of the best abilities you can have. But like you said, I mean, 7 minutes of just kind of hanging out when this is the easiest to take him down is pretty big overall for Draco Mariano. He's just coasting right now, and he's got a level lead, so it's working out well.
He does. I mean, he even went for the blink in that first relic slot, which makes a ton of sense on Geb. Your engages are so much better. Like, monumentally better with it as She's going to ult to the sky. Finally, the Poppies are the ones looking to try and take a fight. Streak Up responds by using the beads early on. Good damage from Warchi. And the Blink Cataclysm from Draco Marino means that Streak Up is still in trouble, but they don't have the last bit of damage. A good stun from Hazer means that Fails can show up and find the kill. Marcus is the one that drops, and Fails wants a bit more action with the Volcanic Lightning. Doesn't have that first ability available, so Warchi gets to slowly walk away as Cold Llamas find their kill.
Man, if he had one more cone auto there for Fails, he could have hit that last minion and potentially gotten the last little bit of damage, but unfortunately you only get 3 of them. That's how he got him that low in the first place. I love the way Streak Up replies to that, but mainly the team makes that rotation to come in. Even now, it's starting to affect them all over the map.
Like, what's going on, dude? I don't know. I don't know what to say about what I just saw happen just now. I mean, obviously, Prime, that can't happen. Like, I mean, duh on that. But I don't know, Gore. I don't know. Please chair 2 for me. That's frustrating to see.
That one, I feel like that was the case of, oh, we just, kind of, essentially, we lost our fight over there in duo. We got to pick something back up. You know what? Maybe I can try to pick a fight here. I'll use my ult. She'll use her ult. Oh, she missed. Easy. This is go time. Oh, they have a lead on me. Oh, I didn't think about that. Like, the damage that Discordia does in a one-on-one, I think Raijin can do a lot, but Pretty Prime, a couple of those were just off the mark. They were wide. And short, he missed. And so the damage in return didn't hit Shekio. So he was happily under tower, and again, just kind of coasting through the fight. It didn't even feel like he did anything exemplary.
Shekio just kind of avoided Han. It ended up working out for him. He's going with a Pythags piece for one of his first items. Not a particularly popular pickup right now, but I do think there are some scenarios where, if he's trying to kind of augment everyone's damage where it can work. We've seen Pythag be picked up early. Just not particularly common. A lot of people like the flat thin builds right now. They're mages.
And it's going to be interesting to see how, like, Pretty Prime tackles that. Like you said, like going for maybe some flat pen here early on in the Sphere of Desolation, but then some percentage, it's going to affect these tanks. Streak Up is the target of this gank. Marcus finds the very first kill, but Fails has the turnaround damage. Hazer is the one that actually puts it to bed with the underhand tactics. Fails knows that he's stuck. He has to try and trade, but there is no way out. Draco Mariano with the basic attacks gets the kill, and now Hazer is stuck in between 3. Somehow a Geb is now 2-0-2 with a double kill 10 minutes into the game. So, if you were wondering what could happen with a coordinated gank from Cold Llama's draft, we saw it was pretty solid, being able to burn some of those relics. They got a single kill out of it. And if you're wondering what a coordinated strike from the Poppies is going to look like, that's going to be it. Case in point, I mean, you didn't even have to use the blink if you're Draco Mariano there to get that Cataclysm off. And like you said, being 2-0-2, it's probably the biggest thing for the Geb, but now he's got a 2-level lead. He's getting more comfortable in being that facilitator for the team. I mean, Geb is full of knockups, he's full of knockbacks, he's got a stun. Everything in his kit is just built to set up someone else. And if Marcus is in the neighborhood with his ult, or if Warchi's around to be able to follow up, it's going to mean a kill, which means Cold Llama's, I think the window, it's still maybe there, just very close to being closed, but it's very difficult to take down Draco Mariano where he is now.
It is, man. He's got that Thebes on and starting to work on getting it stacked as well. So it's not going to be easy once he finishes that to kill this Geb. I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways that window is closed. I mean, ironically, we talked about how Cold Llamas had kind of started the fights, like that one in the jungle. There was a gank in left. But 2 of these last 3 fights have started on the Poppies' terms. They started with Warchi's ultimate one time we saw, and then just now with that gank there in left. It's the Poppies that have started to realize that, they're kind of starting to hit a bit of a groove here. They could start some fights.
And honestly, with the leads they have, where they have them, maybe you are a level behind the Pele if you're Marcus, but you have higher kill potential than Fails does right now. So you can kind of take that hit and farm if it means getting the rest of your team ahead. It's one of the things I actually really like to see out of a jungler sometimes, where it might be the unfortunate thing of maybe you're not the carry for the first portion of the game, right? Maybe that becomes later. But if you can help get Warchi to the point where he's ahead, which he is, get Draco Mariano to the point where he can support the way you need to in either a 3v3 skirmish or a team fight, it's just going to make it a lot easier for your team as a whole. And now you've got Draco Mariano kind of running around in the jungle. If Marcus decides to hang out with him, that's just free knockups for Marcus to be able to capitalize it on. That makes it more dangerous for Pretty Prime, for Streak Up if they go over there. Like, anyone they find across this map, it's just going to be in danger.
They will have to be fearful of Marcus and where he chooses to go. It's Aegis there for Prime. You know, we have seen sort of a trend lately, I feel like, of these upgraded shells for the carries themselves to pick up. It's still here. The upgraded shell is there for Hazer. But I think that these carries are feeling a bit more like they'll get value out of the Aegises in this situation. And it's interesting. These are both assassins where I think shell can sometimes help a lot, but certainly no problem, I don't think, with this Aegis.
Yeah, it's always that question of where's the damage going to be coming from. Are you expected to get it burst down and you can block the, just straight up block out damage for a few seconds and that's going to save you? Or do you really need to stop like the autos? And you know, when you're maybe against something like the Willish, you can look at the autos, and I think Marcus is going to maybe benefit from it just being an Aegis, but Chekio, Warchi are maybe going to struggle because that Aegis coming through. Like, their big burst abilities are going to be pretty easily dodged out by that. And the same thing can be said on the opposite side. Chekio not going to have to worry too much about Pretty Prime or maybe even Streak Up coming through. Although I feel like Chekio maybe could have gone for that shell if he had wanted to. Like, it's that toss-up of whether or not you want to invest. Because usually Aegis, low enough cooldown when you upgrade it, you don't have to worry too much, right? Shell, once you upgrade it, yeah, that's nice. You still want to get a Relic Dagger, and if you don't want to put that in your build, it's usually better to maybe just shift over towards that Aegis anyway.
Yeah, I think Chekio is up for debate on it, but maybe not so much Prime, man. Aegis so effective against that Discordia hold. And being able to not get hit by that back tip, so I agree with you on that count. This is the part of the game where I would have, just on paper, said that I would have expected Cold Llamas to be the aggressors here, but I feel like the Poppies might be the ones who kind of control this momentum right now, that maybe it is the Poppies that are sort of dictating where these fights happen. If there will be one, it'll likely be near the Gold Fury. Fails is starting to show some presence there. Warchi sees he's nearby. Hammer is hit by Hazer, started off, but Prime has already lost his beads. So the Poppies starting to try and get aggressive. Fails, uses the Volcanic Lightning, but is answered back in kind. The Poppies and Cold Llamas both have some low health bars, so everybody falls back.
I simultaneously like and dislike Streak Up's use of the Suns there, because they come down, they get a little bit of damage, and they force Warchi to go out of the fight instead of into the fight. But it feels like if he had been able to maybe potentially wait for a better grouping, which happened just thereafter, and granted, hindsight's 20/20, so of course I can say this now, but if you maybe wait for a better grouping, maybe you're able to spread that damage elsewhere, and it sets up Fails, maybe Hazer, to be able to lock someone down and ensure a kill in that engagement instead. But I think just keep Warchi out of there, keep him uncomfortable. He's been one of the biggest carry factors for the Poppies across, what, 5+ years? So when it comes down to it, you absolutely want to make sure that, you know, he's not comfortable. And right now, he's, again, just kind of coasting at 0-0-3, so he's just chilling.
He's finished the Executioner now, and it looks like he's going to be going into more attack speed afterwards. Already has the Light Blade picked up. A bit surprised. I feel like we see Rage so often in that slot, and maybe he's worried the Hercules can punish him. Maniac already has the Thorns picked up, and certainly that's something Poppies would know by this point, so he'll be going for more of the attack speed pen route as opposed to crit.
Which is funny because I was actually thinking that's a great build for Streak Up in this game. I mean, there's 2 Guardians on the other side you're going to have to burn through. I wouldn't mind seeing him go something that's just built to kind of ignore those, you know, health items, those protection items, and make sure they die off anyway. And there's still a good chance he'll go for it, especially with the Mark. I think Streak Up's going to be able to burn through him, but for Warchi, it's going to come down to who are you fighting the most, and if Maniac is going to be the one that should be causing him the most trouble in the late game. I mean, part of your job as that, you know, solo lane warrior especially is get back there and make sure that guy doesn't play for this fight so that everybody else on your team can have a good job. If you just straight up burn through Maniac and his Thorns means nothing to you, his Mystical Mail kind of means nothing to you, then you're going to be able to get a lot of damage down onto him without him having as much kill potential back.
I also thought we might see more rotations from these solo laners, but that's not been the case. They've kind of just slap fought over here for 17 minutes uninterrupted. 0-0s for both of them. We did see Prime get his ultimate forced out in mid a little while ago. It's almost back up now, but that was because he didn't have beads at the time. Still 10 seconds from that as the Suns rain down. Draco Mariano does find a 3-man Cataclysm, but who can follow up on it? It looks like the answer is no one, as Llamas force them to use that valuable cooldown, but it looks like Hazer used Frenzy as well.
And looking to get aggressive, but not aggressive enough. It feels like, again, Cold Llamas want to fight, but the Poppies just said, nah, we're good. Like, we just don't want this engagement. And they've been doing that so much. I mean, part of what we've been saying is it feels how the Poppies are kind of dictating where the engagements start, where the engagements end. And in moments like this, you see the frenzy get popped, you see the aggression, a couple of ults get dropped, and you're just like, cool, we're just going to let you hold that one, and then we'll come back later, maybe even more prepared now. The only thing they're missing is going to be that shell, which might end up playing a big factor here, Draco Mariano not having that, but still, well, about to have Cataclysm back up, about halfway charged up. Warchi still has his ult in case they want to engage or get some slows going. I think the Poppies are just looking for the favorable team fights, and Cold Llamas are just looking for team fights.
Cold Llamas are slowly catching back up. Remember, Poppies for a little while had about 1,000 voltage or something. Nothing crazy or anything like that, but that has slowly gotten normalized. Cold Llamas are almost fully caught back up here at this point. The experience does still favor Poppies, as the 5-2 kill line might lead you to expect. But I'm just wondering, Gore, as this game goes later, you know, is Fails going to really be able to get back there to check Yo and Warchi reliably, or will there be a Shockwave and a Geb Shield and a full shell in his face every single time, right? Or will Creed be back there with a tail whip and slowing him and a pluck? I mean, I don't know. I just wonder that Cold Llamas might have missed a bit of an opportunity.
Yeah.
If they can get past those Guardians later, it will not matter. I just feel as though either way they've made the job harder on themselves than it has to be, as Cold Llamas might get this Gold Fury for free. I don't see anyone really getting here in time. It's down below half, burned by the Suns, and Llamas now able to take a small gold lead.
What I like is you can see actually Draco Mariano is still kind of moving on the map in a way that seems that they want to fight. In fact, Warchi's going to go in on Maniac. Normally you would expect it to be the other way around, but that forces the shield out of Draco Mariano.
It's just late from them. They might still be able to get good pressure, though, onto Prime Chekio, as well as Marcus were able to get back there to the back line and put some really good pressure on him. A nice Strife lands that sets up for the charge prey. Maniac has to use beads, which he has as his second relic. It does allow him to escape, but there's the Blink Cataclysm that hits a couple more members, all creating space for the Tier 1 tower to fall down.
And you don't need much follow-up after that. You get 2 clean kills on what I would argue are maybe the 2 most important people on this team to get rid of for Cold Llamas, at least at this stage of the game. Soon enough, especially now that that Rage has been finished for Streak Up, he's going to start having a huge target on it. And they recognize the advantage they have. They're going to potentially push Fire Giant. It seems dangerous, but Poppy's maybe looking for a bait more than anything.
Glad they thought better of it. Not only were they not super likely, you know, to get it, they were probably in like a 60-40, but I don't know that they even had that great of a bait strategy there. Who was your target? Maniac and Hazer with ult up for both of them? I mean, I don't know that they necessarily could have forced a really heavy commit. So the Poppies, I think wisely, back off there. It was still a great sequence for them, though, wasn't it? I mean, I know they lost the Fury, but they get 2 kills, the Tier 1 tower, and Pyromancer.
And honestly, their lead is bigger now than it was pre that Fury, so
That's
maybe
true.
Worthwhile giving it over to Cold Llamas.
Fury was a net loss.
It just ends up working for him. Like, you can see the little bit of a dive down, and then it just curls right back up at the end there, because Poppies, they just recognized the team fight. And it at first felt like maybe it was Draco Mariano being upset, like, no, we can't, you let them just get away with a Fury, we'll chase them down. They had to be grouped up for it. But Warchi being able to go in the air and call out specifically, Maniac is alone, let's go on the Hercules of all people in mid, is what makes the big difference. I mean, if otherwise you're diving into the red buff in this area, nice narrow corridors, very difficult to fight, but great for Streak Up to make a rotation into it. You find a nice fight in mid, which allows you to go for a tier 1. I think the Poppies just recognized a better fight.
Another grouping on the left side, but with the Fury down for 2.5 minutes, I don't expect this to stick around. There's really just not anything to fight over here. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight does start to move over to the right side of the map, and we'd start to see some posturing around the Fire Giant. Creed setting the groundwork for that, trying to grab this tier 1. He might get it, his minions are falling, but Maniac is on his way to contest, and Creed just kind of gives it up and comes down to join him. But look where Marcus is and Draco Mariano. They are on an expedition into the backline, into the jungle of Cold Llamas to see what they can find. And Streak Up willing to use the Suns just to deny that tower pressure.
I mean, not only denying the tower pressure, but since Marcus and Draco have been noticed over here, it's making sure no one's going to blink on me under this tower for free, right? It's not just going to be minion aggro until you hit me. It's going to be nothing. You have to full commit. Now, maybe it puts Warchi in a bad spot. He can't get away forever. Streak Up actually plays that one kind of slow and low behind. I'm surprised to see them maybe fall back that hard.
Well, it turns out they were right, because here come the cavalry. Great ultimate from Marcus, catches Streak Up, he has the beads. Cataclysm gets him the second that CC duration is down, and Streak Up never got to play Smite. Marcus is the one that gets the kill credit for it, and the tier 1 tower in left will fall. And this was my concern, Gore. Eventually, if you just do nothing, you're trying to fight through all this control from the Poppies.
That's just, imagine that you're waiting, you use your beads, your Aegis, and you still just get CC'd to death. And that's the unfortunate scenario there for Streak Up. And honestly, with this build, the minute that Warchi rotates in, Maniac, Hazer, they're not going to be able to withstand the damage. Honestly, towers aren't going to withstand the damage he's going to be able to put out. He's not necessarily the crit machine that maybe Streak Up is going for and maybe popping off the mid laners or dealing with the junglers. But man, when it comes to objectives and tanks, Warchi is going to be just #1 in terms of structure damage and what he's able to do to him.
There is going to be a crit build coming out from Streak Up, which is a bit surprising because he's the one playing it to the Geb, but obviously he's not planning to put most of his damage to Draco Mariano. He's hoping probably he can blow up someone like Marcus when he's diving on him relatively quickly, especially because Marcus is such a damage-oriented build. It's not Bruiser-esque really at all. So that has to be the thinking I'm thinking there for Streak Up. But still, it's just been an odd game plan to me from minute 1 for Cold Llamas here. You know, if they're not looking to try and take advantage of their early pressure, then they're in a tough spot fighting into all this late game control.
The only way I can describe it is it feels like Cold Llamas are going for that like stereotypical European, well, let's take it a little slower, guys. Like, we don't have to fight a ton. And the Poppies are just playing whatever happens to be in front of them, whether that means a kill, whether here it means an Oni Fury, like where that pressure goes, they don't really care. They're just looking for the next big advantage. And so far, that's led to 4 times the kills Cold Llamas have been able to put out, much more beneficial engagements for them. Even when they lose that first Fury, they end up coming out ahead because of the kills and the Pyromancer. I think Poppies are playing much more like we expect to see out of some of the higher end teams.
A Wheeless ultimate used onto Maniac, which even in the best case scenario, I don't know how great that is initiating for him, but either way, Maniac was worried, used the beads to get out of there. The Oni Fury was the Fury the Poppies just got, and this is excellent timing for that because everyone has to be over here to defend fire, but look at the long lane, look at mid. Those Oni minions should be able to start pushing up and creating some pressure on these structures here eventually, and someone on Cold Llamas has to answer it.
And they're going to end up sending Pretty Prime out. That's a lot of damage. Yeah, mid's maybe not that far away, but it's far enough that he's not going to be able to be a huge impact for some team fights. If Maniac, Hazer take just one step too far, they're gone, and they're going to be eliminated. And I like the way Poppies are playing this as well, because they know that pressure is going to be mounting up over there in left. In fact, you can see it at the Tier 1 tower line. At this rate, that can start putting some pressure on that Phoenix over there, for someone even further out of this fight. And they're just taking turns backing, 1 or 2 at a time, still hovering around this right-hand side. They just got that Tier 1 over there in the solo lane. The map pressure itself is starting to benefit the Poppies, and the map is playing itself for the Poppies. Cold Llamas have to commit people to the other side of the map just to try and slow it down.
Yeah, but if no one's pressuring fire,
it's a win.
It doesn't matter, right? Like, I don't understand. I don't know. The Poppies, they back on their Pyromancer, which is good, right? You're able to get back into the FG pit so much faster that way, but they didn't really feel comfortable starting up the FG, so Llamas just back up. They defend that wave over there in left pretty cleanly, and now they should have everybody here. Fail's going to keep this mid wave pushed up, but Cold Llamas still up there 5v5, and Creed misses the charge Prey. Hercules pushes it back. Draco Mariano moves in with the Cataclysm. Prime responds with his ultimate too, but Llamas are on the full disengage, and that's Creed and the initiation from Draco Mariano on cooldown.
Now, Prime does, using his ult for the CC immunity there, brilliant, because he keeps both his relics up, right? So trying to engage on him, not going to be the easiest thing to do. I'm actually surprised to see Warchi decide to push up left. I was like, oh yeah, he's doing this because he has his ult. No, it's down. He was just not available for all of that. I'm kind of curious as to what their goal is with him over there. And it feels like it's not Fire Giant. That's not where the Poppies are looking at right now. They really do just want to win a fight off of Cold Llamas, potentially to push down some tier 2s. If they get the FG in the process, I'm sure they'll take it as a huge benefit, but definitely doesn't feel like it's their main focus. They just don't want Cold Llamas to accomplish it.
Agreed. It does feel a bit like, at this point, like we're seeing both of these teams be a little bit odd. I mean, you mentioned it very early on in the game. You kind of identified it where even the Poppies weren't really all that aggro, were they? They weren't really all that active. They were doing a great job of responding to Llamas, even with that Fury response play, right? It's just a matter of how much can they hopefully find the backside. Looks like we are having some issues here, so no worries. We're working on getting those sorted out. But Gore, kind of to my point, I don't know that either one of these teams feels that confident right now that they could be the active one.
And honestly, I think it just comes down to the fact that the clear, or maybe the potential to get the kill on a Fire Giant is a little bit better in my eyes to Cold Llamas than it is going to be there for the Poppies. I mean, the Poppies have a lot of good damage to get the burst, but who's the secure? I mean, Chekio's ult isn't going to necessarily do it the way you want out of a mage. And honestly, it's not Pretty Prime that I'm looking at as being that secure objective taker. It really is Maniac. I think that boulder coming down from Hercules is enough to be able to kind of simulate something that you expect maybe out of a Kraken or something else. It can steal and it can confirm.
Draco Mariano has been pulled back in. Got to be careful pulling the Geb, though. You don't want to give him a good Cataclysm. Doesn't show up there, as Fails has made his way to the backline. Now it's Azer's turn, but Fails pays for it handily. Streetcups does drop the Suns, but that's really only onto Creed, and he lives through it. There's the Raijin ultimate really only onto Creed, and he lives through it. Big strike over the wall from Chekio has helped this fight turn even further for the Poppies. Marcus looking for a wraparound, so Creed goes in first to make some space. The tail whip is there for the knockup too, but still, the Poppies can't quite close the distance.
The Blink Charge Spray just to close the gap, and now they're chasing him down. Warchi melts tanks, and that's what he's doing.
Marcus makes it over that wall too. He jumps behind the purple buff pit, and he's able to get back there to blow up Cold Llamas. And I'm sorry, man, it's gonna be hard to beat this draft from the Poppies if you drop the Suns and the Taiko drums onto Creed, and he lives through it.
So everybody on the Poppies had a low health bar, except for one guy through that fight. Now everybody's charged back up. They back to the fountain. Warchi, his health bar didn't drop. No one hit him with anything. I mean, this guy just sat in the back line and did much like what he's doing right now to the Fire Giant. Throw out those autos. He's gone for, again, just a pure pin build. And if you're Maniac, if you're Hazer, and you get caught out by that, none of those items make a difference to you right now. Your Thorns maybe saves you for a second if you're Maniac, but those weren't available by the time Warchi was there. They have no itemization to maybe deal with him. And what I like to see is Creed, guess what he picked up? Spectral Armor. All this crit that Street Up's going for, not only does it not work that well against the Geb, now it's not going to work that well against Creed. And he didn't really get the chance to see anybody else in that fight throughout all of that. The Suns, as you mentioned, were dropped on Creed to slow him down, to try and lock him up. Now that kill potential is almost completely out the window.
Creed now has that Spectral 2, which will really deny that crit damage is basically only going to work on Marcus, Chekio, and Warchi now at this point. You know, it's so interesting because that was probably the best start of a fight Cold Llamas are going to get. Fail somehow made his way to the backline and had kind of free reign to start putting out some damage. Good relic usage from Warchi did kind of keep him healthy, as you pointed out. But I think that what we're seeing is that into this composition, if you just wait until the 30-minute mark, I'm laughing because I feel like I've said it already a bajillion times, there's just no way that Fail's going to be able to kill that backline back there. There's too much protection for them. There's too many good relic options. The Geb is too protective there too. You just aren't going to get enough time. And I feel like that's what we saw happen in that last fight. Fails is back there. It's just that he doesn't have time to kill them.
And it's the problem we highlighted, not just with Fails, because, well, once he gets back there, it's very easy to turn that damage right on top of him, as the 1 and 4 slash line signifies. But if Streak Up's building to try and kill them just as well, I mean, you have Fails and Streak Up now who are built to try and get rid of the back line on the Poppies, and neither of them have been able to get back there. It almost makes me wonder if you change out that Rage. Like, if you have the Hunters swap builds right now, I feel like Streak Up's starting to have a much more impactful game because he can look to burst through Draco Mariano. He can look to kill off Creed in some of these cases. And yeah, maybe it means that he trades off his potential against Warchi, Chekio, and Marcus, but it might be worth it if you're not going to see them any other way. If you have to kill Creed to get to him, you have to find a way to go through him.
Right now, it's a 1-2-2 split. You sure don't see this very often, but Warchi winning his matchup, so I think that means the plan is working. He'll be able to threaten the left side Phoenix all by himself. Street Cup has to back up as Chekio and Draco Mariano are getting the better of their trade so far, and no one is rotating over to stop Warchi, so he's just going to take that left side Phoenix. Even though he has to tank up a few tower shots, he could back to base and return with his ultimate.
And that's the best thing the Charterbox is going to be able to bring this. And Warchi, I think with this build alone, is going to be able to kill off a Phoenix. You give him Fire Giant, now you give him the potential to be with his team. It doesn't matter. In fact, he doesn't even need to be here. Like you said, he could just maybe put pressure on mid, ult over if they really need it.
Wow, that's what he's going to do. He's going to line up in mid again and dare someone to come stop him, and no one can do it. Maniac has been caught in the CC chain. It costs him 70% of his health bar. Prime just goes for the raw ultimate. He hits a couple of them onto Creed. The Suns are there too, but everyone on the Poppies just kind of backs up. Cataclysm lands. Hazer gets pulled back in with a shockwave and never gets a chance to touch the ground. Draco Mariano gets his 4th kill of the game.
Yeah, there's these little yellow numbers that are going to pop up whenever these tanks get plucked, and those are going to be the extra damage that Chin Size is going to be doing here. For Warchi, you're going to see their health bars just get depleted there. And, I mean, I saw a couple of crit numbers pop up, I'm assuming from Streak Up, trying to get some damage out. But look at the health bars on one side versus the health bars on the other. 2 are dead, everyone's almost full. I think Draco Mariano taking the most, and that's because he's tanking a Phoenix. This is solid for the Poppies.
Yeah, the Poppies should be able to win this game at this point, right? I mean, the Titan now down to half HP. Fails goes to the back line. But as has been the case all game long, it's proving difficult for him once he makes it back there. I mean, this one feels to me, Gormizer, like a game that the Poppies were winning from kind of from the beginning of the game, from the 7-8 minute mark when Cold Llamas didn't show any aggression.
And honestly, it's just because the Poppies have been dictating the fights. Everything they've done, even this fight, has been something that they've said, this is how it's gonna shake out, Cold Llamas. Like, we're not gonna let you choose the engagements that are gonna be fun for you. We're going to be able to follow it up. It's led to, you know, not just the Titan kill, but I mean, some of the Phoenixes, the Fire Giants, some of the Furies that they were able to get throughout all of that were just the Poppies saying, this is the fight that we get to take. Every other time the Poppies early on felt like they wanted to get aggressive, it either got stalled out or turned on its head to the point that it didn't really make a difference.
Yeah, I can maybe count 3 times that the Poppies got aggressive that game, maybe. I mean, I don't know, man. It wasn't a whole lot from them. And I think that if that's going to be your plan is to kind of chill, then I want to be the one coming in with a Geb. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be the one coming in with a Subek for the late game. So all my point is, obviously these are talented players. They know what they're doing, right? It just did seem to me to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of how they allowed Poppies to draft and how they played with their draft.
I still think there's some questions to be had. Again, when it comes down to the pin build versus the crit build, obviously Warchi's pin build worked out fine for him. He'd had no issues, but I think the crits going up against the Geb passive plus a spectral armor, like, you're obviously not going to kill the tanks. You weren't at that point getting to the back line, so maybe some things that could change up from Cold Llamas. I think a lot of it really is just not even huge mistakes, just little things where it's like, yeah, okay, tweak that going into the next game, and all of a sudden this is drastically different. But play your draft to its strengths, and that can make the biggest difference.
The damage numbers were there. Streak Up is a good bit behind, though, and I think that is kind of to your point, right? If they have another, well, look how much Morchi did, 17,000. If he's got another 6,000 to 8,000 damage, you know, maybe this game does look a bit different, but it's just difficult. I don't think they ever got to damage the targets that they were looking for on the side of Cold Llamas, which is a big part of sort of the problem there for them with this composition. So they've got to make some adjustments, I think, now, Gore, as they start to think about game number 2. I don't even think it's necessarily got to be in picks and bans. I think they have to make sure that they're identifying how this game's going to go and then playing to what their strengths will be at different stages of the game.
It's this weird shift that maybe I'm just reading too far into it. Maybe it's not actually happening this way, but it does feel like there's some players that have been around the scene for a while, specifically when you've been isolated in Europe. What we have seen generally in the Challenger circuit and even in the days of yore where the SPL wasn't this, you know, hybrid team, it was slower play. There weren't as many kills. It wasn't that much fighting. And the Poppies simulated that while still fragging out. That's what's really weird. They played patient while still being able to find those kills, but it felt so much like the Cold Llamas were hitting that patient play style with a draft that doesn't want it against a team that was kind of countering it every step of the way. And so that's the biggest change I think I want to see them shift through.
Agreed, right? It is to sort of make sure that those two mentalities are a bit more lined up. And it's not as if their draft cannot play in the late game, right? I don't think that's sort of the argument either. I just do think that it is you playing into the other team's greatest strength is more of the way that I guess that I would try and clarify it. So making maybe your job harder than it had to be and it didn't work out for them in that game. But obviously, Cold Llamas are very much capable of finding that turnaround here in this set, right, and still winning 2 games in a row and being the winners here this.
Yeah, it's a lot of strength that I think can come out from them, and the question in my eyes is whether or not they're going to have the, I don't want to use the phrase mental fortitude because I think it brings more negative connotation for them, but just making that swap, not having like a salty run back, not being upset about any mistakes that were made, just being able to go, okay, clean slate, you know what? Poppies played X well. Now's the time to be able to come back into this one and control their pace a little bit better.
All right, Gormizer, that's game 1, but I know we all want to get into that action for game number 2. So give us a few minutes. We're going to get everything ready for that. We'll be right back with that second game.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Feel like a dynamite, ready to explode right up in the sky. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us and coming back here to the SCC in Europe. We're still in the middle of our set between the Poppies and Cold Llamas, and right now the Poppies are feeling pretty comfortably on top at 1-0 after that game 1, where it really never felt like they were out of control of the match. Gore, was that your read of it there too, where it kind of felt like the Poppies just chilled their way to a win?
I mean, they had, 7, 8 times the amount of kills Cold Llamas were able to pick
Yeah.
up. I think at the end they hit a 3 threshold for Cold Llamas, which maybe made the difference. But all of the kills were on to Marcus, who arguably as a wheelish probably had to put himself in danger the most of all of the carries. So maybe not something to write home about. It did feel kind of like, they coasted to the late game, and then their draft just felt better late game. I think their builds hit a little harder. And when you have a Geb with a Geb shield ready to save literally anybody at level 20, he's happy.
It did. I do also wonder, if they were getting maximum Tycho drums value out. You talked a
Yeah.
little bit about maybe, some of the build there for Street Cup as well and the Hoi. There were just some couple small things, that maybe could have been the difference maker there from where we are sitting. So now we're starting to gear up for the second game. And this could be the last one here, Gormizers. We're into those picks and bans, potentially, depending on, how the Cold Llamas react after the way that first game went. It looks like Llamas will be in that first pick spot here, though, so maybe that can make a difference for them.
Yeah, this is the portion of it where, again, a lot of what we said and a lot of what I think is applicable doesn't necessarily change in picks and bans. You could probably run the exact same draft if you wanted to for Cold Llamas.
Sure.
It's just the play style around that draft. The Hercules, we spent maybe the first 5 minutes talking about how great it will be when he can make some rotations, about how great he is at taking an advantage and turning it into something massive, because that's just what he does, is early game aggression. And then he never left the lane for 17, 18 minutes. It just never happened for them. So if you can maybe, even pick a similar style, but play to it, that's the big difference for Cold Llamas.
Yeah, I mean, if I picked Sobek and you pick Hercules, and 18 minutes into the game, we're both triple zeros, even in gold and experience, I think it favors me because I'm Sobek. I don't know, man. He was the top picked one for the Poppies last game too, so maybe that's an adjustment Cold Llamas can make.
Yeah.
And it looks like that will be the case. They're just going to ban that Sobek out, so they don't have to deal with him in those big team fights. He was such a disruptive force.
So I like where Cold Llama's head is at, because right now it's disrupting the things the Poppies, were stellar with last game. The problem is maybe letting through other things they're already going to be able to control you on. I mean, that's 3 of the 5 that the Poppies were able to run. And I would argue at least 2 of the 5, maybe even 3 of the 5, because of what Discordia brought to the fight, of what helped the Poppies make that look so easy as they got into the late game. I mean, there were so many good strife moments, so much damage that this Discordia was able to output, and then the 2 tanks themselves were virtually unkillable. And maybe, you know what? Geb's passive is off board, the shield is off board, but there's still supports that fit that style. There's still supports that fit the style of Sobek. I just don't know if they're targeting the true problem here.
Looks like Cold Llamas are now going to take the Jormungandr in the first spot. So they ban away all of those Guardians and then pick a Stolen Lane Guardian for themselves. I imagine Maniac will be piloting this. And this is a comfort pick for Maniac. He really does like to play this Jormungandr pick when he gets the chance. But Poppies now will have their chance to take the Raijin. Remember, Chekio can't play the Discordia again. That's been banned away this time. So they'll go with the Raijin Jing Wei, which was banned out. And they've got their backline set up and ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good start. I think I'm very happy if I'm the Poppies right now. You get, Warchi on someone somehow even safer than what you're going to see out of like the Chernobog out of last game, and you get the Raijin coming through. That's just going to be more damage, arguably, I think, than what you'll see out of Discordia. And depending on where those ults go, it could be, more disruption in the team fight coming out of the mid lane. And I mean, Kuzenbo Nike, it's a lot of control from Cold Llamas. I just don't know if it's going to be enough lockdown to keep Raijin and Jingwei locked down.
It's quite a few tools, there's tons of dive potential between the Kuzenbo and the Jormungandr and the Nike, all of them. It really feels like with this first 3 picks, their ability to get to the back line is going to be pretty strong. So it just feels a bit more brawlery to me what the Cold Llamas have come in here with this time. But the Poppies pick Ganesh, and his job is like, no, you're not allowed to brawl. So maybe the Ganesh can do enough.
Well, I like it because, Jormungandr, Kuzenbo, Nike, like you said, a lot of potential to maybe get into the back line, to zone out or chase down some of these players and gods. Raijin can dash away, Jingwei can dash away. Ganesh just says, don't get off of my carries, either by stopping you in your tracks and knocking you up, or straight up silencing you so you can't use any of your abilities to get back there. I feel like the Poppies have enough self-peel and peel just in Ganesh and the rest of the gods they've picked up that they might not even need to worry about looking for more peel the rest of the draft. I think they're feeling pretty comfortable and confident as is.
I would say so. At this point, they just need probably some more damage over there for the Llamas. Poppies electing to go with the Baron Samdi. So this is very different already from, I feel like, what we've seen up at the SPL so far. I mean, this is clearly its own sort of thing here in SCC Europe. And the Baron is popular. Variety will play this sometimes, but this is also something that I think is just a strong soul lane pick if it can make it the same way that they did last game, right? If it could just comfortably make it to 16, 17 minutes, it could be tough to beat.
I think maybe one of the easiest thing for Poppies to do is, just land wait. Very similar, as you said to before. The Baron Samedi is going to maybe, I don't want to say struggle, because a lot of how his lane goes and how his matchup goes isn't really in the 1v1. It's not how well can you try to fight the Jormungandr, how well does he fight back against you. It really is. Is Nike over there stopping you, let's say 90% of the early game or not? Because if she is, then that's great. Maybe your lane goes poorly, but Jingwei and Raijin are then popping off. I think there's a lot of pressure now on the jungle for Cold Llamas to just pop off across the map, or else it's just going to fall apart.
It certainly could, but we are ready now here, Gore, to hop into the games. Let's start up number 2. We saw the draft round out. Marcus picking up the Bakasura. And I feel like we don't see that many of these sort of basic attack-focused assassins anymore who skew a bit more towards that mid to late game. But this could be a point where maybe the Poppies could make it work here for them.
I love it because Doug knows exactly what I'm going to talk about right before it happens. The takedown's the first ability. That's just because when you're Bakasura early on, you're not looking for a fight very early. You're waiting for those Butcher Blades to come online, and if you're looking to try and fight Maniac, Fails who's a warrior, Hazer, a lot of people on Cold Llamas who just straight up can't run away from you as well, your ult with a Butcher Blades is going to be able to eat through these health bars. I mean, you're going to have the true damage coming through. I'm assuming his build is going to kind of facilitate him having a little bit more attack speed to make sure that comes out a little more often. And except for a couple of dashes, Cold Llamas aren't going to be in a position to really escape Marcus when he decides that it's their time to die.
It could potentially be scary for them. Maniacs have to really watch his ultimate cooldown as Hazer does find the push onto Draco Mariano. Doesn't get a whole lot from it, because there could potentially be a really strong gank over there in solo. I don't know why I'm saying it when our solo laners spent 18 minutes without any action last time, but yeah, if they were to fight over there on that solo side of the map, it's good for Doug to highlight the beads were just used over there and left. There could be action as Mariano is in trouble again. Hits level 2 though, and gets the dash. That allows him to get back out of there. Could have certainly given up first blood. Gore, maybe you could talk about a potential gank over there since I didn't get a chance to.
I mean, that's maybe the secret that came down. What we were talking about a lot last game was pressure over there in the duo lane, maybe being something you could apply if you're Cold Llamas, and it never came through. The Poppies were able to make some counter rotations to what Cold Llamas were looking for and make sure that they never really... Nothing came to fruition. Nothing big happened over in the duo lane that made the difference for Cold Llamas. Now, Nike, if she can get behind them, try to lock them down, specifically maybe even get between Draco Mariano and Warchi, which is going to be very difficult to do. It's hard to separate the two. If you could lock down Warchi, and even though he's playing what I would argue is one of the safest, if not the safest hunter, yeah, you could try to find some of those kills, try to lock him down, because I do think there's a lot of what the Poppies have in terms of safety and in terms of carry potential. It's almost all based on how well did Warchi do at the very beginning of the game.
He was great for them, but I like this shift in mentality for the Llamas already, Gore. It feels like they're playing more aggressive. Now they're lining up for purple buff invade. Fails will be here for this as well. The push catches Warchi, we know, doesn't have the beads, does use the knock-up and escapes with an extra bit of shell to keep him alive, but Streak Up finds the damage over the wall. Must have been the Heavenly Banner, so they find first blood, but they still want more. Draco able to squeeze his way to the tier 1, and he will survive.
It's a weird fight where your tier 1 is safer for you than your tier 2, and it is that Heavenly Banner that just gets dropped. I think for Warchi, again, your Jingwei, your passive lets you not necessarily miss out on a lot of farm, so dying isn't always the end of the world, especially early on, but now there's a little bit of first blood bounty on the side of Streak Up. They get the 2 assists plus that kill, so experience going to shift a little bit over in favor of Cold Llamas, and those are the factors that you have to kind of keep going, but they have to take this lead and dial it to 11, right? It's not just, hey, can you get a little bit ahead? I think dealing with Marcus, dealing with Chekio, and then Creed, once he starts making these rotations over, it's going to require you to force them to make mistakes early. It's going to force you to make them fight early, because otherwise, I think a full build Bakasura who knows what he's doing is going to be able to shred you.
And that's why Cold Llamas have to keep up this pressure that they've already established pretty well. And it's interesting. I mean, I do think that this composition with this Kuzenbo and this Nike may be a bit more geared towards some of this early aggression, but I don't know, man. I think they certainly could have had the same thing in Game 1, but I'm glad they're making some of these adjustments now and starting to get aggressive. They're stripping away this purple. The next one that spawns up will be our chance to see if Cold Llamas really want to stick to that as their game plan and how well the Poppies are going to respond to it. Is Marcus going to be there? Is, you know, obviously Draco and Warchi will be there, but just how much will they rotate over in numbers to try and slow him down?
That's going to be the match, the pace matching that wasn't really there last game, is the only way I can think to word it. I mean, Cold Llamas were trying to get stuff going, but never seemed like any of it wanted to make a big difference for them. Unfortunately, that included them getting locked down pretty often. Where Marcus is on the map is going to have to be met and matched by fails almost 100% of the time somewhere, whether it's helping a gank out in the solo lane, much like they are kind of right now, or whether it's trying to match something over in the duo lane, like fighting the opposite sides or opposite corners of the ring here that is the Southwest map. But there's the life of the party. They're looking to lock down fails.
They are. They would have liked to try and get to Maniac if they could have, but he wasn't there, so they'll take this blue instead. Fails actually taking a good bit of damage from this too, as Maniac has now leveled up the ultimate. I wonder if he didn't take it at 5, because I just saw the diamond come through as Hazer takes a ton of damage, does get hit by that last bit of damage. Chekio has just about everything on the mark, and Hazer cannot escape.
So this is going to be maybe a weird take, maybe a hot take. I don't know. Dharmic Pillars might be my favorite Guardian ultimate, just because of the damage output that it has. I think when it comes down to it, there's something to be said about Defender of Olympus and how good that is for Athena in the right metas and how impactful it can be. But Dharmic Pillars is just so much damage when you, because people will walk in and out of the ability. You cannot deny that people love to do that for some reason. But it's also so good at isolating someone, forcing them to walk through maybe something that's not going to be very comfortable for them. You get prot reduction. They're slowed now. That debuff, oh yeah, it's 3 seconds, so it's going to help you for a little bit after they leave. And when you start making rotations into the late game jungle, it's going to hit everyone in those narrow corridors.
That was a good setup from Hazer, but he was just a little bit too early. Prime and Fails were on their way to try and follow up, but I don't think they were quite in range. Good work there from Chekio to Thunder Crash back out of there. But you're right, man. It's just such a versatile ultimate, isn't it? The Dharmic Pillars that Draco Mariano is going to be piloting here this game. Because even if you do kind of just stay inside the box, that way you can avoid, running through those outside rings and all those negative effects, you're certainly still in a bad situation. So worst case or best case scenario for you, it still looks bad. I think that if that ultimate is placed well, it is one of the best Guardian ultimates in the game.
It's so versatile because, like you said, like you could be trapped in the box. Maybe you're trapped on the other side of the box and you don't want to run through it. So either you have to take a new path, or you're stuck in place, or you have to use your disengage, your leap, or some ability in order to get out of there. And most of the time, that's not enough to save you. And it also can, well, help save you as Ganesh in engagements much like that.
And this is good. They knew there was going to be pressure on this left-hand side because of purple, so this is the other way the Poppies can respond. Either they can bring numbers over to Agoramizer, or they can continue to come pressure the other side of the map and look to bully Maniac, which is what Marcus has done in this time. And look at the level disparity between him and Fails. I think it's favoring Marcus.
This is, I kind of got to mention it last game, specifically because Marcus was looking a little bit more for kills, taking some fights more often than he was looking for farm. This time it's the other way around, but unfortunately, Fails isn't playing in a Wheelish with high kill potential. He's not playing an Assassin, period, that has high kill potential. And Nike, she's a really solid jungler. She can do a lot of setup, but in terms of kill potential for Cold Llamas early on, I mean, maybe pretty prime in terms of his damage output, maybe streak up. I mean, we got to see what he could do with that first blood, but they don't necessarily have someone that screams to me, this is the guy that's going to frag out for the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you look on the other side, Raijin? Oh yeah, that's going to hurt no matter what stage of the game you're in. Same thing for Jingwei to an extent, but especially this Bakasura, who only gets better with time. I just feel like Cold Llamas are playing the pace they should have been playing last game, but now with a draft that wants the style they played last game.
Hazer getting cheeky in the middle lane, looking for another blink push play, but I believe Draco Mariano was on time there with the silence and cut all that nonsense out. And you could just kind of see it, right? What's happening right now is that Streak Up is getting ahead of this Jingwei because of all these repeated purple buff invades, but Marcus is getting ahead of Fails because of his repeated blue buff invades. It's a question of who's going to be able to leverage that relative lead better, and also who does the deficit being on hurt more. And I have to think it probably hurts Fails a bit more than it hurts Orchid, as another purple buff invade will come through. Couldn't be defended by the Poppies, but they make it out with their lives.
And I think, honestly, if you're going to have to trade XP in that sense every time, it's probably worth it. I mean, it sucks that Cold Llamas are over here on cooldown every time, but That's also the only place that they've had any semblance of control this game, and even now, Maniac's caught between, well, 2 towers and a Baron. It's just these awkward scenarios they keep finding themselves in where it's like, the small caveat you finally got yourself isn't going to win you the game.
So eventually Maniac does acquiesce and chooses to ult. They drop the Dharmic Pillars, well placed, and Maniac pays for it. You were just mentioning how versatile that ultimate can be, and well placed from Draco to secure that kill on the Maniac.
And you know what? Most of the time there, and when it comes to Guardians, you don't really care about the damage, although it definitely helped out a little bit. That protection reaction, it just does so much. Dharmic Pillars are so good when it comes down to it. Hey, here's this Guardian. Guess what? Now he's taking more damage, and he just got out of the only ability that, you know, he's going to have that is guaranteed safety for him. And I like where Poppies turn that pressure. I mean, Pyromancers in 10 minutes aren't necessarily the easiest and often call that you see out of a team, and they get it mostly for free.
Yeah, Poppies want the right side of the map. That's where they want to be, dude. They want to be over here fighting, and it's working for them right now. And look at Fails. I mean, yeah, he can get Alpha Harpy, I guess. Purple when it's up. It's just not nearly enough on that side of the map. And I think part of it is that the luxury you get when you pick Jing Wei is you kind of can just let this pressure develop on the left side because she'll still get her farm. Now, this is where your answer has to come from, though. The Llamas pulling the gold free now, bringing it down to half. I don't think Poppies are going to make it in to contest this in time. Llamas get the answer back that they needed.
And the biggest difference, because I was having flashbacks to game 1, this time they don't get some insane follow-up right after the Harpy goes the way of Cold Llamas. So it's still going to be overall a positive for Cold Llamas, but it's just taking down a chunk of the lead Poppies have so far, right? It's not enough to be able to say that they are in the lead yet. In fact, they don't even get that much control out of it. But stripping it away from the Poppies is actually maybe the more important factor of it. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit of gold, but they don't get that control.
Maniac has to hold right this second, and it is going to be in time. He should be out of range if he uses all 3 charges to disengage as well. It looks like that will be the call, though his tier 1 tower will not be as safe. Fails is over here to try and help out, but Marcus is doing it again. Is forcing it. You're right. Draco Marino's hunting him down. A man on a mission gets the kill on the Maniac. The tier 1 tower comes down. Now Fails. Silas. It becomes food for Marcus. Hazer blinks in and does find a good push. Marcus is taking a ton of extra damage, but in comes Chekio to try and even up the numbers. Prime gets out of there at the tail end, but only one little bit of the ultimate from Chekio hits, so Pretty Prime will survive.
Imagine using the World Serpent. You're under tier 2 and you're like, man, whew, finally I'm safe. I'm just gonna back, heal up, maybe buy some items, and get back into this lane. I mean, I'm just getting bullied so hard this game. Oh no, wait, never mind. There's an elephant on top of me. The support has come out of the jungle to kill me off. And it's just the presence of mind I think Draco Mariano has to be able to utilize this Ganesh. There's a reason I think we don't see a lot of him, and it's just because trying to get him in the point where he can feel this much control throughout the game doesn't happen often. Honestly, late game, most of the time you just say, did he use his ult in a good fashion? If yes, then the team had probably a good fight, and if no, everything fell apart. Because the silence, it's nice. The protections he can give to his teammates, the peel he has, it's nice. But there's other Guardians that can do it, maybe to an extra extent. But if you get him ahead and you get him comfortable, much like Draco is right now, it is a different beast to tackle.
It is, man, and it's tough for Maniac over here. Right now he doesn't have the ultimate. He has to play so much safer, and Marcus is here to get him. The ultimate does come up just in time, so Maniac is able to make it back out of there, but he has to be defensive like this every single time on cooldown, and because of the fear that Draco has put into his heart, he has to keep on running. So the blue buff should belong to the Poppies on the right-hand side too, obviously the totem and all that farm, and they just have not gotten enough in left core to try and equalize it out.
I don't think his little glance backwards towards the jungle to make sure no one was chasing him would have been anywhere near as funny to me if it wasn't for the fact that we could still see that Draco was kind of looking down at him, like maybe I could go
gonna
get
lazy
that
back,
kill. Hey
maybe,
guys,
or?
should I go or like let him be this time? And I think it's only because they saw that they could get maybe some pressure elsewhere, maybe save those Dharmic Pillars, because they look to be maybe mounting a fight over here on left. They wanted to hold on to it as they could.
And another sort of problem for them was that fight over in right, if you consider Streak Up the lead for the Llamas, which I don't think you can, Warchi might be in some trouble. Hazer blinks in. Good knock up, and no, Warchi's not in trouble. I forgot he was Jing Wei, I guess. He's never in any trouble as he very effectively evades the gank on the left-hand side. But that fight in right didn't even get to have Streak Up in it, who you might classify as the Llamas' trade-off, right? They're part of the lead. Instead, the Poppies get to have the fight entirely on their terms.
It's really weird where, again, you get so much early on in favor of Cold Llamas, but 1 level in solo, 2 levels in jungle, 2 levels in mid, 2 levels in support, and Warchi maybe a little bit behind here. It's going to be, realistically, whoever ticks the 15 first, and then the next one, maybe 2 or 3 minions just behind the other. They're so close to each other that the Poppies have just been able to slowly but surely farm themselves up to the point that we were in last game, where, yeah, they haven't really been... Well, I can't say they haven't been aggressive. They've been really aggressive this game compared to where they were last game.
Right.
But they're not doing anything crazy. I mean, nothing out of the ordinary, save for maybe the odd Ganesh gank that keeps coming through from Draco. A lot of it is just looking and reading the scenario maybe a little bit better than what we're seeing out of Cold Llamas. And that, honestly, I think comes down to communication.
And remember, the Jormungandr was the top pick for Cold Llamas in this game, so they really needed to get a lot of value out of Maniac piloting a comfort pick for him, and instead he's kind of just been bullied all game, and they haven't really been able to come with an answer. Pyromancer being burned. This should belong to Poppies, and they already have Draco Mariano in position for this Fury that's spawning in 5 seconds, so they know that that won't be sneakily burned while they're elsewhere. The Poppies are doing a good job right now with awareness everywhere on the map and making sure that Cold Llamas can't find some way back into this one, because the 4,000 gold lead they have is good, but it's certainly not a death sentence. Cold Llamas could always turn it around, but Maniac has his ultimate forced out again.
This time he's able to use a little bit of aggression in this one. A little bit of damage there on Marcus, but more or less repositioning. I think the call is maybe for him to come over here to try and fight over this. Oni Fury. Gold Fury is nice. It helps take away maybe the lead, but Oni Fury gives you some pressure that is much needed for Cold Llamas here. And so having everyone in the wheelhouse, everyone ready, everyone able to go in, even if it means that Maniac isn't maybe as safe because he doesn't have that World Serpent, it's something that you need in order to win this fight.
It is going to hamstring Maniac, though, in this fight, right? Not having the ultimate, he's not going to feel safe moving up. And remember, with Celestial Legion, if he takes some stray physical damage somewhere in this fight, not super common, but if he does, he'll start chipping away at those procs he's built up. So Oni Fury has been pulled. Frenzy popped by the Poppies. They want this fight. Draco really wants Maniac. They zone him out, but they can't pull him. I think someone could have afforded to stay on the Fury here. Is now Creed in some trouble. Gets pulled back in towards everybody else. And the Fury's still healthy. This could be the best fight for the Poppies that they've had yet. But Chekio point blank hits the Taiko drums. Marcus gobbles up Maniac, and Hazer cannot do enough on his own. I spoke too soon. It's a 3-for-1 for the Poppies.
And honestly, Creed, if he's playing not a mage there, probably is still able to not only be a part of this fight, but maybe still be alive and keeping things going. But honestly, that's a worthwhile trade. You're definitely getting that Oni Fury right now. And now, unfortunately for Fails, he's locked down in the middle of 3 members as Chekio decides to just join the party at the very end of it. It feels maybe a little sloppy at the very beginning from Poppies and how they want to engage on that. I think that there's maybe something to be said of a life of the party, Dharmic Pillars, odd combo that just pulls everybody in. All of a sudden, prots are reduced, someone's getting stunned, no one can run away, and then you just follow up for the kills. But their zone was so good on the left side of that fight, forcing people back towards mid or around into the red buff. Cold Llamas just had to take an awkward fight.
Yeah, honestly, I think the only reason that fight was so close is because the Poppies were super telegraphed and heavy-handed onto trying to kill Maniac there, right? I mean, the slow walk up, the frenzy pop, then the Dharmic Pillars, then continually walking at him. Meanwhile, Creed is off somewhere else using Life of the Party. It's a bit of a heavy commitment on that initiation for the fight in a disjointed effort that doesn't really get them much. But they're ahead at that point, man, and they were able to kind of turn that fight back around, and it kind of showed that even when Llamas were in a position where some of the Poppies' best tools were used a bit suboptimally, it wasn't enough.
So this is probably going to showcase how much I play Bakasura, because the answer is not as much anymore. It used to be one of my favorite go-tos, but I don't play jungle as much as I used to, and so
Sure.
I haven't really played with Erendite on Baka, but that fits so well with his ult. Now that he has this chin size as well, you pop the Butcher Blades, you regurgitate onto the ground, and whoever you've decided is going to die, they're gone. They don't have much of an opportunity to fight back.
I'm curious if he's going to be looking to try and pick that up next. Prime is low already. Great disruption, though, from Hazer. Does keep Prime alive in the backline, and Maniac wants to come in, but he gets stunned the second that he rolls up. Draco has fallen, though, which means Maniac can maybe get some value out of this World Serpent ultimate after all. Hazer doesn't find anything with that push. Instead, he finds the end of his life. That's unfortunate for the Kuzenbo, that when they might have had some momentum, he kind of gives it back. But Prime is too low HP, so is Maniac. Maybe Poppies can force this down.
It really is just coming down to the difference in it, and it's specifically actually this rotation, maybe more important than anything. Chekio goes down, but what can Fails do for the team versus what can Marcus do for the team? Marcus isn't in the fight, and then maybe he's going to cost Creed a little bit of his life. Whereas they could still try to fight this back, but they don't have that many ults on the side of the Poppies to make this work their way.
But they do have their best, like, repeat damage, right? Between the Boxer and Orchi as Maniac gets locked down with the CC from Creed, and he will end up falling. Still, not particularly clean from the Poppies there. They're the team with the lead. I think Cold Llamas had a good defense on that Tier 2 core, but clearly the Poppies still out in front and in control.
It's just coming down to how they take the fight, right? Where they decide to rotate in. And unfortunately, I think this is something that we've seen, and it is the natural progression of things. Warriors in the jungle, built the right way, can absolutely match some of the pace that we've seen out of Assassins, right? But they're not built to do the same amount of damage, and so you're just effectively this kind of, I don't know, half and half. You're a bruiser in all sense of the word. You're going to be able to, deal some damage, maybe isolate and destroy a mage, maybe cause a hunter to force themselves to use either the Aegis, a shell, or something to get popped from their support. You can force them to feel awkward, but Fails doesn't have the same kill potential that we're going to see out of Marcus. And I think I got to say this again last game, where it just feels like Marcus, if he makes the right rotation, makes the right call, is going to be able to walk away with 1 to 2 kills, whereas Fails, if he makes the right decision, makes the right call, they might get 1 kill, but it depends more on, is Pretty Prime there, Streak up there to help you follow it up.
Fire Giant in half. Reed used the life of the party, and he brings Fails down low, almost by himself. Dharmic Pillars keeps Fails trapped, and Prime has to eat a Taiko Drums to the face. Fails does jump in and find a Sentinel of Zeus, but it's not as much health when you haven't built up that many procs. Draco keeps Maniac silenced, and that's enough for Chekio to get the triple. Somehow Draco is still alive through it all, too. Marcus does keep Streak Up zoned out, but Hazer wants to come in for the cleanup patrol. Can't find a kill. He does help them still. The Pyromancer, it looks like, but his life is certainly forfeit at this point, as he will go down.
Well, hey, in 20 seconds, Pretty Prime's going to be able to run out of that base as fast as he wants. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be up for many other members of the team. I guess maybe for Fails there once he respawns. And maybe here for Streak Up since he manages to get out alive. But that means the Fire Giant's going to be pretty much forfeit this time around. And even though that, I would argue, maybe goes well for Cold Llamas at the beginning, it just feels like it slips out of their hands. Yeah, you get a Pyromancer in return, but nothing else. Nothing to pick up. No huge plays. I mean, Fails, I don't think I've seen a shield appear and disappear that fast in a game before,
yeah,
so that was actually an impressive thing to see. But it's more just the play from the Poppies that's giving them this control.
It is. I thought Creed had a great ultimate that fight. He really brought Fails low at the start of it, and they committed the Dharmic Pillars there to really isolate him out. I didn't see what happened to Prime, but he was like, he was 10 HP very early on in the fight as well, and then Chekio was able to finish him off with the Taiko Drum, so that was a great start to that fight really for the Poppies. They were the priority targets early on, and that's what kind of left Cold Llamas, even though they were in a decent situation, they just didn't have the tools left to try and win that fight.
I'm just trying to think of where you fight back now. I mean, if you're Cold Llamas, the best place to maybe find pressure, I would argue, is somewhere on the map, but you're not winning any of the fights around it. They have a pretty good defense team, though. And that's coming down from the fact that Fails is maybe this non-aggressive warrior that gets to come through. I think we've seen a lot of the benefits of warriors in the jungle. When we watch the SPL, you can see what they can accomplish. Even here in the SEC, we've seen a lot of what they can accomplish. But I think, what we've seen out of most lately, I would argue maybe the Vamana jungle, who hasn't had maybe the most successful run in history. Every now and then the Nike, they bring a lot to the table, but the minute they fall behind, everything starts to fall apart for them. And so as of right now, Fails is good for defense, and I think that's where Cold Llamas need to be on, and that's what they need to be thinking about, is how do we stop these Phoenixes from falling down? How do we force the Poppies to overcommit? and then we can turn it around. There's no objectives on the map if you win a fight around these right now, but it at least stops the Poppies from being able to end the game, sub 30 minutes.
At this point, Cold Llamas are fighting to hold on. They're down a tremendous amount of gold here at this point. And because we're only 24.5 minutes in, that 15,000 gold that they're down, the 23,000 experience, those are still somewhat relevant, as not everyone has reached level 20. Yeah, look for Cold Llamas, 18, 18, 17, 14. The experience deficit still matters right now, as does the gold. So this is a huge lead that the Poppies have. It's basically going to require for Cold Llamas to win some really good defenses all in a row up against the Poppies.
And I feel bad for hi-rez because there's a lot of moments where, not only is it a 6-level swing between him and most of the people he's going to be fighting, but he doesn't have a lot of health in this build. Yeah, he's got some physical prots, but that means Creed, Chekio, they're going to be able to melt through this Kuzenbo with not too much issue. They've already forced his ult just to try and get some of the peel out of there. This is like the opportunity to aggress into them. The ability to go in and maybe find some of these fights is built around where hi-rez is and how much he can accomplish for the team.
Frenzy pop. Dharmic Pillars does catch both carries, and Streak Up was the one that was really in trouble. Chekio point blank with the Taiko drums gets one. Creed is able to take care of Fails, and Chekio, a man on a mission, is able to find Prime. Marcus gobbles up hi-rez, and just like that, I think this set is over, Gormizer. That's it for the left side Phoenix. Poppies should stream into the Titan room and put this one to bed into.
Yeah, it comes down to just team fight ults and what they had. I think the combos from Poppies, maybe a little bit stronger. And again, I said it earlier, when you have a Ganesh, maybe he's not the end-all be-all of your game, but a Ganesh with some really solidly placed Dharmic Pillars is going to be able to lock you down. And I think that they just found that too often, too many times, whether it was catching Jormungandr on that last clip of his ult, or the last two fights, making sure that Fails couldn't get away and couldn't really aggress. He had already used his leap, so you're just locked in a box with nowhere to go.
Yeah, Draco had a great performance there, Gormizer, and they really needed it. I think they needed every bit of what he was able to give them that game, especially when they were trying to counteract that early pressure. Because I think Cold Llamas came into this with a much better game plan than we saw in game one. They had long lane pressure, and they wanted to use their warrior jungle to invade constantly. And the Poppies kind of just said, okay, and they went over to solo lane instead.
I think that's, they just changed their focus. They even gave up that first Gold Fury, not necessarily willingly, but they didn't commit to much thereafter. They weren't really committed to chasing people down. Marcus just said, you know what? Maniac seems too comfortable on this Jormungandr. They first pick it. Let's make it mean literally nothing the rest of the game. Let's make him use his ult before he can even rotate to a team fight. And so many times was it Maniac getting caught out. Fails, unfortunately, maybe trying to get aggressive, but Warchi's playing Jingwei, so you're not going to find anything there. Chekio's on this Raijin. So good luck. You're either going to lock him down or he's going to kill you. One of the two options would rise up, and unfortunately Chekio with that, almost 12k damage, I think was hitting a little more consistently than we got to see out of Cold Llamas.
Yeah, great game there from Chekio. A great game from Creed and Marcus showing off their synergy with that solo lane pressure. Maniac leading all players in terms of damage taken. I think that just goes to show that he was pretty clearly the focus in that match, and I don't think that Cold Llamas were able to adjust quite enough on the fly in order to counteract it. Poppies got off to a tremendous early lead there, Gormizer, and they did not end up giving it up. But that's it, man, for the SCC for Europe here at the very least. It is the Poppies that come out there on top. We still got SPL coming up here a little bit after this, Gormizer, so this is not the end of some of the cool competitive Smite you get to see today.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited. I think a lot of the matchups today specifically are going to be very, very fun. More do not misses. I guess we've actually hit the point where there's only do not misses. I mean, E United SSG, it's probably more important for E United. Any losses mean, well, bad news bears for them. Maybe good news for Obey. But PK Sanguine might be the one of all to keep your eyes on, because that one, Finch, there's so much that could ride on that. If PK win, that could just mean a lot in terms of standings, but also just in terms of the state of the league.
You're right. It could suddenly push the Knights up to third, perhaps, and Sanguine up there contending for first and second. There's a lot on the line here at this point. So great point there, Gormizer. We'll have plenty more time to talk about it, though. It's in about half an hour when the SPL is starting up. So make sure that you stick around here to enjoy it. And that's going to do it for us here at the SCC.